Okay, well, welcome back to Josh and Jesse's Your Mother Ate My Dog podcast, where we watch a movie that we've either never seen before or we have not seen in a long, long time. So it's like we're watching it for the very first time. Then we talk about the things we liked and the things we may not have liked until eventually we scored it and wrap it up in a nice bow and never talk about it again. Greg, you may be wondering why it's been like 3 weeks since our last episode, and all I can say is I'm so sorry. But we have a great one for you today. It needs no long, drawn out introduction, because this week we watched Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. Jesse, did it live up to your expectation?
Well, I would say it did in certain ways, and in some ways it did not. What about for you?
No, I don't think it did. Um,
Right.
I, it's it's a 1992 movie,
Mm-hmm.
so I guess my expectations shouldn't have been so high, but like I said, Francis Ford Coppola? Francis Ford Coppola,
Yeah, that's the one.
Sophia's dad. Um, he obviously from Godfather
Mm-hmm.
fame.
Mm-hmm.
He's done other things too, I'm sure, but
Yes.
and Gary Oldman. So I was expecting like a very, very good movie, and it was like it was decent, and my score reflects. It wasn't a bad score. It's not. We didn't watch The Haunting again. It was
Right.
it was a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
2 hours. I just kind of wish it was a little better.
Yeah, it definitely could have been a little better. Um, I would say to start it off, I think the big problem or the big sort of element to this movie that really affected my enjoyment through the entire thing was the acting because it was very hit and miss. And I will say it was mostly miss, especially in the moments that were supposed to be like really dramatic. I felt like those moments oftentimes ended up being like overacted, and then it just became kind of cheesy, and it sort of took me out of it. And I would say, unfortunately, that Gary Oldman was probably one of the biggest. He was one of the main people who did that. Like he definitely had very good moments, but he also had a lot of moments where it was just overdone and it I don't know, it just didn't work for me. And another Sadie Frost, who she's the one who played Lucy. Her
Hmm.
character was also like very over the top, and but not in like a very good way, if that makes sense.
A side note to
Mm-hmm.
that, was this the first movie that we've seen on the podcast with nudity?
Uh, I think it might be.
To go back to our VHS roots, where every single movie we watched had nudity in it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Uh, that was kind of a surprise. Wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, I wasn't either.
Um,
Yeah.
on the acting note, though, I agree with you. Acting was relatively poor,
Mm-hmm.
um, especially from the characters that you would expect to maybe be a little better. I do disagree with you on Gary Oldman, though. Like, it was over the top, strange at times,
Yeah.
perhaps overacted, but I think it kind of needed that. The Dracula character kind of needed
Mm-hmm.
that that craziness if it was anybody else, or if Gary Oldman had done like kind of a tone down, I don't think it would have been as good.
No, that's a good point. There was an element of like weirdness that maybe just didn't sit right with me for some of the scenes.
The movie in general
Hmm.
was
It
weird,
was weird.
and I think that's where Coppola was going. He wanted weird. He didn't want kind of the standard Hollywood film. He wanted something a little strange, and I think he hit it. Um, and I think a big part of that as well, the weirdness was kind of the special effects.
Yep.
No CGI in this. It was all
Practical.
like camera work and
Hmm.
makeup and costumes.
Yeah.
Makeup and costumes won Oscars,
Did they?
I believe. They won 3 Oscars this movie, but I think it was all for like costuming and makeup and set design, maybe.
Oh, that was interesting because I actually have on my notes here. I have something about the costume design that was actually more of a negative thing. But
Oh,
I'll get to that in a bit. First, I want to say that there were some good performances. Like I know you liked Gary Oldman's performance. For me, it was like I was saying, like there was some very good moments and some moments that didn't really work for me, but it wasn't overall bad. It was just kind of like in the middle. But I really liked Anthony Hopkins' performance as Van Helsing, and also a surprise was Tom Waits playing Renfield,
yeah,
the crazy.
yeah. Hmm.
He did that actually quite well. It was like there was at no point was I like taken out of it from his performance like I was with some of the other actors. That and on that note, I will say Keanu Reeves was pretty dreadful in this movie. I thought he was by far the worst performance. I hated almost every second of it.
Did you know he was British? It was a pretty flawless accent.
Oh yeah, that was yeah. You know, I thought, oh whoa, is Keanu Reeves actually British? I had to Google it.
Nice.
It was so convincing. But yeah, no, his accent was done really bad. It was terrible. Like when I heard Winona Ryder's, I was like, oh, this is actually pretty good. And his just fell so flat. It was hard to watch.
To defend Keanu a little bit, um, obviously he does have the knock of being not a very good actor.
Hmm.
But I was reading as I was deep diving into this movie, I read um, a quote from him saying, like, he spent a lot of time on that accent. Perhaps he spent too much time on it. He kind of
Hmm.
over prepared for it,
Right.
and he'd also been doing movie after movie after movie coming into this role, so he was burnt out. Like
Right.
I mean, I guess that's not really an excuse.
No, he was doing
Um,
a lot of things around that time. That's true. I mean, yeah, I mean, I can give him the benefit of the doubt to some extent, but still, I didn't like any scene he was in. I mean, it was a tough. Regardless of if he was well prepared or not, I just didn't enjoy it.
yeah, good thing he wasn't too. He was a main character, but he wasn't in it for too.
Yeah, yeah, he wasn't in it too for very long. That is true, which was good. I will say I did like coming around to some of the parts you were saying that like won Oscars, like the set design in some parts was really cool, especially the insane asylum. I thought, you know, those people with the cages on their heads and like the padded room that Renfield was in, just like the general feel of that entire set was great. I also found that the effects, like you were saying, they were always all practical effects. They went a long way in creating like really good atmosphere, like the different use of like shadows and noises. Yeah, they worked really well. That was like one of the highlights of the movie for me. And coming to the costume design, personally, I actually didn't find it all that great, except for like what I was saying before, the insane asylum set and costuming and all that. That was really cool. But the main feature, you could say, would be Dracula, and I just wasn't that blown away by his different costumes. Like I thought in the beginning, his armor that he was wearing, like his dragon armor, could have been a bit more interesting. And when he was like the old man with the weird hair, I just thought he looked really stupid.
Okay.
Like that hair was just so dumb. It was hard to look at anything else. And that's actually a pretty. I've heard that before about this movie that he has like really weird hair, and I totally agree. It's hard not to look at. And I did like when he was just trying being like a normal, appearing as like a normal man when he was sort of wooing Winona Ryder's character.
Mina.
What's her name? Mina. That's right. That part was cool, but I say overall I wasn't too impressed with that, and also the outfits of the other characters. Just wasn't really blown away. Like I thought Van Helsing could have stood out a bit more, but I don't know. I could just be nitpicking.
No, that's fair. The camera work, to go back on the camera work, when
Hmm.
he was wooing Mina in London, like the way they
Yeah.
were doing like old-timey camera. I don't even know what it was. But it was like I don't even know how to describe it. It was
Hmm.
like an old-timey. I'm just gonna keep saying old-timey. Maybe that'll watch the movie and you'll know what I'm talking about. You obviously were not alive in Transylvania in the late 1800s, so
No,
you don't know that um, the armor is actually pretty close to accurate, uh,
that's true.
and all the costumes. I think Francis Ford. He
Coppola.
yeah. I'm not gonna keep saying his last name because that's he found some pictures. Um, because Dracula was a real person and he had a lot of photo albums
Hmm.
in his castle, and they actually got a hold of those, and it was pretty accurate to kind of what they were wearing. So good on
Oh,
them.
okay.
That's kind of why they won the Oscar for it
Oh, like
because
accuracy.
of the accuracy. Yeah.
I see.
Not a big. I wasn't too big of a fan of Winona Ryder in this. I just don't know if I like Winona Ryder overall. Um,
Hmm.
Mr. Deeds, maybe the best thing she's ever done,
Their
but
deeds.
I just can't get over her shoplifting charge. So
Oh yeah, that's hard to let go for
her as
sure.
an actress, I wasn't too excited to see that she was um, the main one.
I was kind of like the that was what like that with Keanu Reeves. I mean, I knew he was in it, but Winona Ryder. I mean, I like some of the stuff she's in. Like Edward Scissorhands is coming to mind, and also Beetlejuice. I really like her in those.
She does kind of have a theme that she goes like these scary movies,
Right.
these dark movies. If only she was in
Hmm.
Casper, but she was not. That was Christina Ricci.
Yeah,
Similar
similar
look.
sort of feel. Hmm.
Yeah, so Anthony Hopkins.
Yes.
He he was in probably my favorite, well, one of my favorite scenes. Um, get to my other favorite scene when we talk about the ending, but when he opened that very large and old book and just happened to
Yeah.
find exactly what he was looking for right away, like it just
Yeah.
flipped open for him and it was like, oh, vampires. Love those classic movie tropes. We've
Yeah.
seen it before. This might have been the first one, but one of my favorite scenes. His oh yeah, it's vampires moment. And he
Yeah.
was so jolly when he was yelling to those guys. Also, Cary Elwes. Is he in every movie from 1987 to 1994? Like
Who's?
Princess Bride.
Oh, him. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the mustache guy. He's
Yeah.
in so many of these movies.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Like and all the good
Hmm.
ones. And then what happened to him? Saw
He was in Saw. That's right.
just kind of fell off the earth there.
When you I got excited there for a second because when you mentioned Anthony Hopkins in your favorite scene, one of my notes is my favorite scene in this movie, and it has him in it, but it wasn't that one.
Can I
You
guess?
can guess.
Is it when he meets those guys for the first time and then he not disappears but like transports himself behind the tree and then he's smoking and they're all like, "Oh,
That
Van Helsing."
that part was cool, but the part I'm thinking of is when Lucy has passed, and he's pretty convinced that when they go down into her, I guess she's in a mausoleum or whatever she's in, and to go destroy her, and then they hide as she's coming down with like a child that she's planning on sucking the blood of, and then they all sort of like team up and put a wooden stake through her heart, and he like chops off her head. I thought that
Yeah.
scene was cool.
A lot of head chopping off in this.
Yeah, there was a lot of head chopping off, which was cool.
Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing, um he was very handsy, I noticed.
Yeah.
Uh, First time he met Mina, I did a little he did a little dance with her because he's like, "Oh, I hear you're getting married,
Mm-hmm.
or I hear you have a man." Um, and then he just like shakes um Lucy, is that her name?
Yeah.
Just shakes her good, and then I don't know.
This is a very
Good guy, that
well.
movie.
This I would say that it was like kind of like a theme. This whole movie, it was like everyone was very touchy.
Hmm.
It's a very sexualized movie,
For sure.
and I think that was kind of like a pretty big theme in the book. Like
Did you read the book?
I haven't read the book. I have seen other adaptations of the book on film, like way back in one with Bela Lugosi in it. Although that was
Never heard of him.
he was the first guy who played. Well, no, he wasn't the first guy who played Dracula, but he was in the first movie called Dracula. You know, this is after Nosferatu, but he, I mean, that was in the 30s, I think. Obviously, couldn't quite make the movie very sexual back in the 30s. But later, like in the Hammer franchise, who put out a ton of horror movies, a lot of movies revolved around Dracula. Those are very sexual movies. So I wasn't surprised to see all the, you know, all those the hypersexualizedness of this movie. It made sense. It was a lot of it though.
Certainly,
Yeah.
certainly. The last thing I want to say about Anthony
Mm-hmm.
Hopkins, well, at least the character of Van
Mm-hmm.
Helsing, was that Liam Neeson was considered for the role,
Okay.
and he very much wanted it,
Yeah.
but Anthony Hopkins got it because he's Anthony Hopkins.
Right.
He was just coming off that movie, that really important movie,
Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and so they gave it to him. Speaking of Gary Oldman, he was basically my age when playing this role.
Really?
He's like early 30s.
Oh, looks way older in it.
He's not that old. He's like in his mid 60s right now,
I guess
and this
that's
guy's
true.
92.
Yeah. I guess I've always just sort of pictured Gary Oldman as an old guy. Old man.
Yeah,
It's with the name, it makes sense.
so Gary.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's Greg. Sorry, thought we had a little bit of a meta moment there, but
No,
we did
we
not.
did not. So yeah, I guess that kind of covers all the main things I wanted to talk about. That and I emphasis on throughout the whole film acting really determined how I enjoyed the film throughout. It was just like it was so hit and miss, and some moments it was really cool and really well done, and then other moments I almost couldn't watch. It was so bad.
Speaking of Gary Oldman,
Again,
he hired a singing coach to help get his voice an entire octave lower to sound more sinister.
oh
Hired a singing coach.
yeah, he was
Okay.
an interesting choice for this role. I mean, it worked. It was interesting to hear you say that Liam Neeson wanted to be Van Helsing. I actually could have seen that working as well, pretty good, pretty well.
It would have been a much different take on it.
I think so, but it does in my mind. It makes sense, and I can't really think of who else could pull off Dracula in this film.
In 1992,
Yeah,
what was Liam Neeson doing in 1992?
I don't know.
See, was
He
he
would.
okay? So we watched The Haunting. That was in the was that that was 99.
Yeah, and he was in Schindler's List. That was probably a bit closer to
Yeah,
maybe like mid '90s or something.
94 or something. Yeah. Okay. Well, we might as well get to our scores
Yeah,
then.
let's do it.
Starting with originality.
Well, it is based off a book, so it is hard to give this score. But I will say, having seen other adaptations, this one did have a lot of different things going for it. Like it was much more, how can I put this? More like gothic feeling, I guess, but gothic mixed with like a bit of over the topness, Whereas the other adaptations I had seen took themselves a bit more seriously. I think this one, there was a lot of elements of that were having a bit more fun with it, like a little bit of comedy in parts. And I thought that was a kind of an interesting take. And the practical effects were interesting, and there was a lot of them. It was like a very compact movie. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's like a lot of things. It was very dense.
Right.
That doesn't really play into originality. It's just a random thought I'm having. It's like just a lot. It would be very hard for me to tell you every scene that happens in this movie. Just so much happens. So for originality, like in terms of Dracula movies, I'd probably be a little bit higher. I have here a 6.
Okay.
Yes, that was a long-winded way of 6.
For my originality score,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking along the same lines as you.
Okay.
It is a movie about Dracula
Mm-hmm.
from a book about Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think of Dracula, you think of this skinny, long-caped, pale man, slicked back hair,
Yep.
maybe some bats.
Yep.
I don't know. Those long teeth. It's it was a pretty cool take on a very old story.
Yeah.
So I gave it an 8.5
Oh. Oh. Okay. Mm-hmm.
because it was original. It's an original story about a non-original entity
Mm-hmm. No, that
in
makes sense.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Okay. Um, ending. I'll start.
Okay.
I gave it a 7
Mm-hmm.
because my favorite scene besides the Anthony Hopkins, oh, it opened on the exact page I wanted, came from the ending, and it was when after he got stabbed in the heart,
Yeah.
and they fall back into the exact same chapel where Vlad the Impaler started his journey
Mm-hmm.
after the suicide of his poor bride, which was a fun completion of the story. But the visual aspect of it, the contrast of the blood with the wintry snow background,
Mm-hmm.
I thought was pretty cool. And just how, I mean, he died in kind of a dumb way.
Yeah.
He got just throat slashed and stabbed by these guys who should have been more important, but
Mm-hmm.
wasn't too believe they weren't too believable in my eyes. But that's nor here nor there.
Mm-hmm.
So 7 for me.
Okay. When I think about the ending, I have a little trouble understanding, given what I know about Dracula and vampires, I guess, is how exactly a knife blow to the heart would have killed him. That is not really a way you can kill Dracula.
His head was also chopped off.
I mean, at the very end, yes, but like he got stabbed in the heart with just a normal knife, as far as I know. Unless I missed a part where they may put holy water on it or something, but and then
I thought it was like a pretty big steak. Like it's like a piece of wood of some sort. I don't think it was a knife.
it was wood. I thought for sure it was like the
Pretty sure it was wood.
Texan's knife.
The knife cut his throat,
Yeah.
but it was a pretty big thing that she was trying to pull out of him, or that she ended up pulling out of him at the end. But like it was
Hmm.
like some sort of
No,
steak.
no, no, no. It was definitely the knife because I remember the us like when he's lying on the ground about to die, and he's just like, give me peace, and she takes, and you can see the hilt of the sword, and she like, or like the big knife, and pushes it down
Oh,
deeper. Remember?
okay. Oh, yes. Because she pulled it. Yeah, she pulled it out to cut his head off. Yeah,
Yeah. And so that is
totally. I
not a known way to kill a vampire. And so I just spent the last 3 or 4 minutes being like, why is he dying right now? Like, was it maybe it was because it was still light out and he was weakened or something? But it looked like it had just turned night. I don't know.
That's a good point. They do address it in Dracula 2.
In
I guess you haven't seen that.
Dracula 2. Yeah, so for me that distinctly like took me out of the ending. And it may be just a small thing, or maybe I just totally missed the part where it explains how that worked. So for me, I'm probably I mean, it did, but if I overlook that whole aspect of it, it was like a in a way like a pretty beautiful scene, and it was engaging despite that. So I think I'd just be at a five.
Fair. I'll change my score to 6.5 because I didn't. You're right. You bring up some good points.
Oh, I think I've changed your score, have I?
5.5. It doesn't really matter.
That's true.
Expectation. We've kind of already talked about
Hmm.
expectation. I gave it a 3.
Okay.
I was expecting something much more grander, I guess, by all the players involved, and
Yeah.
it just never, never got to that point. It's hard to put my finger on exactly what I was expecting,
Right.
but I'll just say my expectations were not met.
Okay. Um, Mine were met a little bit more because I knew like a big part of my expectations of this film was just knowing that Keanu Reeves was in it, and that just like put my expectations down a few notches. And I know there's some Keanu Reeves fans out there, but I'm just not really one of them. So that actually did me a service in just lowering my expectations. And for the most part, like the acting was a problem, but at the same time, I kind of figured that it might be that way. So I was higher than that. I was up at a six for that as well.
Let us know in the comments below if you're a big fan of Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, I'd like to know. I mean, the John Wick movies are cool, but he doesn't really act very much in those movies, if you know what I mean.
I've only seen the first one, so no spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers.
The dog okay? Acting is next, and it's also again something that we've talked
Hmm.
about quite a bit on this one. Um, so I'll let you just give a score. It's gonna be low, I think.
It's going to be low. Very hit and miss acting, mostly miss. Some good performances, but not enough to really save it. So I was at a 3.5.
Point 0.5, huh?
Yeah, 3.5.
I gave it a 5, because I liked Gary Oldman. Anthony Hopkins obviously
Hmm.
was great as well. Everybody else just not great.
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves looking paler than ever. Poor guy.
Yep.
Um, okay. So if you had to score this out of 10, what are you thinking?
My score out of 10 is a 4.5.
Okay.
There was a lot of cool moments, but a lot of stupid moments. And it was, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Do you remember giving a lower score to any other movie that we've watched on the podcast?
Um, I'm sure I gave a lower score to The Haunting. I must have.
Comment below if
If you
um
remember.
if you remember, because um okay, well, I'm kind of surprised that I gave this movie a higher score than you, because you're so pumped for it. You kept being like, oh, I know what movie I want to
Yep.
watch. Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Irish author.
Hmm.
So I gave it a 6.5,
6.5.
which might have been high, but there were some creative things done.
Yeah,
Like obviously costumes, makeup were. I mean, the Oscars are pretty timely because when recording it, they happened last night. So
it sure did.
so I know how difficult it is to win an Oscar because many people don't do that. So Oscar winning costumes and makeup, that means something.
Mhm.
Fun effects, camera work, uh, I thought made more than one scene more interesting than they should have been, which helped.
Mhm.
But there was a lot of potential there, and it just didn't hit all the notes for me.
Yeah.
But 6.5 out of 10, probably a little higher than it should have been.
No, I mean, I can see that. It's not like I'm not aghast at that score. It's like, yeah, okay. Makes sense.
Okay, well, I'm kidding. 10 out of 10.
Oh, well.
Are you aghast yet?
Oh, yeah. That's my aghast sound.
It was a fun movie. It was probably one that we had to do here
Hmm.
in the first 10 episodes. Sure,
Yeah.
why not?
Oh, I should also quickly address something.
Oh, okay.
The last podcast, I was sort of teasing, the last episode of the podcast, I was teasing this film, and I wrongfully said that Willem Dafoe was in it.
Oh, yeah.
And what happened there was I was thinking of another movie where Willem Dafoe plays a vampire. It's called Shadow of the Vampire, I think. And I just those two movies just got mixed in my head. It
Disappointing.
is disappointing, but I really do want to see that movie. But we probably won't watch it on the podcast, but maybe we will.
Maybe 50 episodes from now.
Yeah, save it.
We can't really do like two vampires after,
No, certainly not.
at least in the, you know. Um, I have one more fun trivia fact about this movie for you.
Okay.
The wedding scene between Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder
Mm-hmm.
was done with an actual Romanian Orthodox minister.
Oh,
So although it wasn't a legal ceremony, um, under the eyes of God, they are in fact married.
I was gonna say that scene seemed very realistic. I've
Yeah, it was a legit
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah. No, that made sense. That makes sense. Well, that was my choice. That was the film I chose. Love it or hate it. Have you decided what you're going to be picking for our next film?
Yes, I've come to the conclusion on a movie. I just don't know how to watch it. It was on Netflix at one point. I haven't looked into it too much in our short hiatus,
Mhm.
but I will let you know what I
If
find.
it's the same movie as you said before, I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
It's the same movie. It's an adaptation of the Korean film,
Yeah.
which I haven't seen. I don't know too much about. It was proposed to me by somebody else,
Yes.
and I was like, you know what? That sounds good. Wait, it should. Okay, well, I don't know if we're gonna watch the Korean version or the remake.
Well, we should watch the better version, which I think is the Korean version, right?
Right, yeah, the original.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see how that goes, and we'll figure out a good time to do that, and
Yeah.
keep pumping these out for all of our
All
fans out
all of
there.
the Gregs.
I didn't want to keep saying his name. I
Well,
guess
you
that's
did say it
why.
in the intro. I will say also, happy birthday, Greg, because his birthday may even come be on the day this comes out. I don't know when this is going to
Uh,
come out, but it's possible.
oh yeah. I mean, if it's within the next day or so,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow. Well, happy birthday, Greg, and I'm sure happy birthday to at least one other person who's listening to this.
It's possible.
March is a big month for birthdays, I've noticed.
Have you?
In my circle, yeah. Like everybody has a birthday in March.
Everybody, even me.
Well, no, but
Oh, right. Yeah.
all right. Well, Dracula, Stoker's Dracula, Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula was a fun watch. 2 hours. It was long,
Mm-hmm.
but we had a great time.
Totally.
Let the music play us out.
Play that music.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again shortly.
Bye.